Hey everyone, I wanted to go over the new and exciting news that we got for Monster Hunter Rise on the Nintendo Switch. This is not going to be applicable for PC players just yet. And that's the fact that today we're going to be going over the patch notes for version 3.8.0. This is going to be the upcoming DLC patch that we're going to be seeing drop on January 27th or pretty much January 28th depending on where you live. Remember that just about every single last Thursday of the month, we end up getting a brand new patch. And this month in January is not going to be any different. You should expect it to go up live around 7 p.m. East Coast time. I believe that's around 4 p.m. West Coast time as well here in North America. Now, like I mentioned at the top of the video, this is just for the Nintendo Switch. PC players will not be getting any upcoming DLC until the end of February. This is something that I made a video just a few days ago where I talked over the fact that the Japanese official Twitter account went ahead and confirmed that the DLCs for both the PC and the Nintendo Switch, alongside any patches, will be syncing up at the end of February. So we're about a month away from that happening. So this for now is just on the Nintendo Switch. With that said, however, we did just go over the fact that the PC did get a hotfix patch, version 3.7.1, addressing some of the save glitch issues that were causing some issues on Steam for those players. But regarding this version 3.8.0 patch, basically again available on January 27th, and in the mains edition changes tab, we're looking at the notifications regarding add-ons content, such as now will be shown on the title screen at the courier. You'll now be given the option to turn this on or off in the options/promotion tab. This is a brand new feature that's being added into the game for those people who basically keep buying DLC and they have complained that they just keep seeing a whole bunch of like DLCs just prompts appearing on their screen. This is pretty much going to fix that right away. They also mentioned that some text in Korean, simplified Chinese, and traditional Chinese will now be displayed in calligraphy font, but if you're playing in English, this shouldn't necessarily come to too much of a change for you in your typical gameplay. They also mentioned, like they do in every single patch, new event quests will be available every single week. Of course, we already know that. That's kind of been the tradition since the game launched, and new DLC can be purchased from the Nintendo eShop. Now, this one does vary in different patches. Sometimes they add it, sometimes they don't. The fact that they're adding it for version 3.80 means that there's most likely going to be new DLC purchasable at the eShop. Remember, last month, I believe on December 20th, when the patch came out, they also put out like earrings and stuff like that were like purchasable on the eShop, that was not promoted anywhere else, that just became available on the eShop that day. So the option for you to be able to purchase DLC was available last month, but there has been months that has not been the case. Moving over to bug fixes and miscellaneous changes, they talk about the base facility changes. Here they're fixing a bug causing the host to be displayed with a Kahoot on their arm on the guest's screen if the host cancels calling their Kahoot at the same time as the guest enters the lobby. This is one of those really specific glitches that I presume people were just messing around. They found it, they reported it, and they ended up addressing it, but again, not necessarily all that major. When it comes to monsters, they fixed a bug that occasionally prevents a monster's falling animation from being played to the end. Now, this one is interesting because it might actually change the timing of a monster actually being down in a very specific situation if the monster has been fallen down. It doesn't necessarily say if they're addressing the fact that the monster's down state is going to be longer or it's just the animation for the falling animation that is actually going to like really differ. We won't necessarily know until we actually get to check that out. And they also don't mention which monsters it is. We've gone over before in previous patches where they addressed stuff with like Teostra and Kushala Daora, but they don't necessarily mention here which monsters they're referring to. They also mentioned that they fixed a bug that occasionally prevents certain attacks such as sticky ammo from doing damage if they hit at the same exact time that the mud crust around Gyarados' neck is broken. Now, this one is so ridiculously specific that I'm just kind of baffled that they even were able to pick that up. So essentially they're saying is that sticky ammo has to be going off at the same time from two different users as the Gyarados neck piece essentially is being broken. That is just so ridiculously random, and like I'm just surprised that they were able to find that out, but there you go, now that's been fixed. Now, moving over to the player and buddies bug fixes, you're actually going to notice here that they're doing a lot of fixes when it comes to character clipping and essentially like assets being like overlaid on top of one another, which is something that this game has had issues with from the past, like even like going all the way back from the launch of the game. So they're addressing some of those issues now. They talk about fixing a bug that causes the fourth color of the Type 1 coloring to differ between the thumbnail and the actual model. That's just a simple mistake, but they're addressing that as well. They're fixing a bug causing the hair to clip through the armor where combining certain hairstyles with certain pieces of armor. Now remember that the USJ collaboration just came out, and that hairstyle has become really popular. A lot of people are using that layer hairstyle, essentially, or a hairpiece, which comes with this very own hair. Essentially, they're using that for a lot of different armors. I presume the USJ one is one of the ones that they're referring to here, because usually they address bugs when it comes to like layered armor that they just introduced. They usually end up having some, and this seems to be perhaps one of those that they're addressing. They're fixing a bug causing different numbers to be displayed from the same hairstyle on the character's edit screen and the add-ons content screen. So again, this is just more addressing the UI issue as well as the clipping as well. They're fixing a bug that causes the back part of the sideburns of Hinoa's long and Minoto's long hairstyle to clip through the skin. This is another clipping issue where now this is now paid DLC. Hinoa's and Minoto's hair has been DLC, I believe, now for 2 to 3 months. So definitely I've seen that to be one of the more popular ones, especially on Steam, that people are buying, even the voice packs as well. So this is something that they definitely want to address because people are buying it. They're fixing a bug causing the clipping of the upper arm of the player's character when combining certain armware and waist armor. Again, this is just one of those kind of unspecific which armors they're talking about, but it's always, highly suggested that the USJ armor is one of the ones that they're addressing, presumably with other ones as well. And again, another clipping bug being fixed. They fixed a bug that occasionally causes the player's characters and their buddies to be displayed at the same time on the preview screen when selecting change equipment. This is just another one of those interesting login screen issues that they have addressed some of these stuff like that before. They're fixing a bug that causes buddies to be displayed in their old armor in the save file select screen if you change their armor by going through specific steps. And notice that they just say specific steps, but they don't actually tell you what those steps are because they don't want people to go ahead and recreate them and create a whole nother issue as well. They're fixing a bug that occasionally causes the elemental effects on buddy weapons that do not have elementals on them. Now this one I do think is really interesting and perhaps kind of big, especially for buddy damage, which is already limited as it is. But it's interesting that they're saying that it was doing elemental damage, but it wasn't supposed to be. So perhaps it was already doing more damage than it was when it wasn't. And now they're just basically not going to do that. So interesting that they're choosing to fix that, but we won't necessarily get to see what the differences are. They're fixing a bug that occasionally prevents the recovery guide from being displayed when the player is hit with a restricting attack for the first time. Now this one I'm not necessarily sure what to make of it. Restricting attack, is that like when you're like being held by a monster? I'm not quite sure, so I'm not necessarily sure what to make about that one. They're fixing a bug that causes issues when consuming and crafting items under certain circumstances when using the items via the radio menu while the player weapon is drawn. Now, as a gunner, you're definitely going to be using the radio menu. I've talked about this before. If you're a gunner and you're not making use of the radio menu, you're just hurting yourself. You definitely should be able to, especially when you have to craft armor on the fly and your weapon is drawn at the same time. So perhaps this is something that is going to be addressed, helping out hunters and gunners specifically, but we won't necessarily know because they're not being very specific regarding what type of weapons this is supposed to address. The last two are really important if you're a switch axe user and a charge blade user. And the first one says they're fixing a bug that causes the players to always perform a running landing if they hit the ground with the switch axe in sword mode. So basically you were supposed to land, I guess, in a stutter state or like kind of like in a still, but you were like running automatically when you landed in the sword mode. So they're fixing that. Perhaps it's going to change your combo decisions. We'll just have to wait and see. And they're fixing a bug when comboing from the backwards dodge in a forward slash and charge blade in sword mode. So this is another one of those where like you're not supposed to be able to do certain things, but now they're able to fix that. Again, we'll just have to wait and see what those changes are going to end up ultimately being for that weapon. In the last section, they go about the miscellaneous changes. They talk about fixing a bug that causes the color of the prism spirit birds to appear incorrectly on the map's icons list. This is just a simple UI mix-up that they're not fixing. They're fixing a bug that occasionally causes the game to crash if it's taken too long time to boot. This one's interesting because you would have imagined they would have addressed this pretty early on, but now they're finally getting to it. Perhaps it's just a limited one, that there was just some very specific occasion to actually trigger it, so it was hard to figure out. They're fixing a bug that causes the game to freeze if you perform certain steps on the mutuals like list, which will result in an empty slot appearing and then selecting that empty slot. This seems like one of those weird ones, especially when the like screen is just so in your face, especially as the monster just gets taken down. I can definitely see that being a problem for some people, but I would personally just like an option to just not like anyone, like just turn that option off. Like, I don't want to be liking people, I don't want to be disliking people. I just like always ignore it. I don't even bother with doing any of that ever. So I would just kind of like that option to like they did originally with the prompts of whenever you purchase DLC or whenever you download DLC, that you could just have that appearing on your screen or not and invading your space. I would just kind of like that option to just be like, I don't have to leave a like, I just don't care. Just continue on with the game and let it be. I would love that option, but you know, they're not doing that just yet. The last two things that they mentioned, fixing various bug fixes. They always do that, so not a surprise. And the other miscellaneous bug fixes have been made, but you know, they always say that, but we never end up knowing what that is actually going to be. So that's about all the information that I wanted to go over regarding version 3.8.0, that this patch will be going live on January 27th. Again, 7 p.m. East Coast time, 4 p.m. West Coast time here in North America. If you're in Europe, I guess that is earlier than that. If you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up. And as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.